So welcome to this session. I'll share my screen so you know actually where you are, and welcome you to the session of, okay, here we go, of mastering human attention in research. And it's part of a webinar series. So this is kind of the start. Some of the topics I will touch upon here will be discussed in more depth in our sessions, let's say for specific fields like user research or shopper and e-commerce research and brand research, since we use eye tracking and attention research very differently, even though the methods are kind of the same. So I'll give you a bit of an introduction how we do it and why we do it as well. So let's start this off. You have the option to, of course, raise your hands at the end, and I'll be happy to discuss with you in person. There's also the Q&A part here, and I think I haven't figured out how to open the chat. Sorry for that. So the Q&A is where you can pose questions throughout the webinar so you don't forget, and in the end I'll get back to you. And what we'll do is I'll introduce, of course, myself first. I'm Philipp. I'm a partner at I-Square and the founder and the COO, and I'm a psychologist, studied cognitive psychology here in Berlin, and eye tracking has been part of my academic and of my applied research life. And at I-Square, obviously, we use it a lot, and so that's why we also like to look back after 25 years of research and share our experience with you, and also, of course, promote our partners and our client studies that we're allowed to show. So what we'll do is I'll give you a little bit of an intro, some theory as well, examples how we do research in all of these fields, looking at some eye tracking methods, and then open the discussion and also highlight the upcoming webinars. And depending on what field you are from, that would be interesting for me as well. If you don't mind, you can post that as well in the sections, like what questions you actually have and why you joined, like what would you like to learn. I hope I answer these. If not, you can leave them in the Q&A, and for the next session, then I'll try to improve that. So starting with the main question, like why do we at I-Square and you and a lot of researchers like human visual attention? Visual here because, of course, there's other modes of attention, but the most prevalent and easiest to measure as well is the visual attention. And yeah, we ask ourselves that in between as well. Sometimes, of course, we're so in depth in doing research that it's good to reflect on this. And actually, the insights, of course, is a good word. Like eye tracking and human attention gives us a direct way to gain insights, not only what people do, but also what they intended to do, what they failed to do, what they were searching. So insights definitely is a good word. Why we like it, and also why we like to sell it, it's that it's easy to understand. Everybody gets the idea of an eye tracking replay or heat map. And it also helps in the different fields to foster empathy and take the perspective of somebody else. So giving us a chance to understand and see through someone's eye. It's this point, like kind of moving the camera and then trying to understand that person. That helps, especially when you're in product development and design, and sometimes these eye tracking videos actually help a lot, even just in workshops. It's objective, so there's no doubt if somebody has looked here or not. That's measured, it's objective. We can discuss, of course, why somebody looked there, and was it conscious or was it just more subconscious? Was something processed, understood? Was it even liked? Okay. Eye tracking does show these pre-conscious processes. So asking people and actually looking at their visual recorded data is two different stories. It can help us to identify problems and barriers. That's certainly in the UX field, and then also other fields why it is being used. Can prevent wasteful spendings for sure. Like we've done so many studies where a big FMCG company wanted to change their logo, and they wanted to understand why or what is the impact of doing it? Do we get less attention, less sales? So of course, wasteful spendings, and yeah, it also reminds us sometimes to treat attention respectfully. There's of course a lot of visual in Gestalt psychology tricks and cluttering displays or slides or using effects like this one I just put down here. I don't know if your eyes actually jumped down. Will are not respectful, and so it's also a good reminder for us to think about clutter and also about accessibility, like what can be processed by our human mind, since our resources are rather scarce. So at iSquare, we've been doing this human experience research for a very long time. But he mentioned it for over 25 years. Perception and attention is something we really like to understand, additionally to behavior, emotion, cognition. And since we're psychologists, the perception part is certainly part of our portfolio. We don't necessarily do this in every study since it doesn't make sense. And of course, there's also downsides to eye tracking. We'll come to those later. But what we want to get to is the real human experience. Like we would like to understand the whole story. And if we only look at cognition or explicit information, then it's maybe a bit difficult. If we only look at eye tracking, also it's not what we like to do. And the three main fields we work in brand and media, user and shopper research, in all of these we use similar methods, some more quantitative and more online research. So the eye tracking methods are also changing here. Brand and media, a lot more quantitative, user experience, a lot more qualitative, and meaning here the interviews and actually single gaze replace play a more important role. And in shopper research, obviously the supermarkets and the point of sale, that's what we mean here. And the pack tests are a very, very traditional field for eye tracking and attention research. But nowadays also the online digital commerce is of interest. And here then the smartphones come in, and rather than the classical lab testing, which we used to do for a long time. And yeah, we've been doing this, been conducted eye tracking in all of these blue highlighted countries here, sometimes online, sometimes on site, and sometimes actually traveling with our equipment to these countries. Nowadays, we can just send them over, and there's have been many changes over the years. And I also thought about showing the eye tracking history here of devices that we used to use like 10, 20 years ago with the helmets and weird goggles. But yeah, we'll skip this and just focus on the latest tech today. What we like to mention is that actually implicit methods like eye tracking are so important for applied market research. Because they add so much to the traditional questionnaires and the environment, so basically the experimental settings, how we conduct research are very intertwined with these methods. If I do eye tracking, I can of course do it in a very natural environment, like in a supermarket, but normally we would like to run experiments so we can vary things. And then the software, or basically the experimental capabilities, how I can control the environment is very important, because otherwise the analysis will be extraordinary, and we'll come to that too, what we mean with these context environments. And yeah, let's look at some examples. I think I turned the audio off for you guys, and now let's see if these videos have audio. If so, I might just hear it. So we have the different examples here of eye tracking. The first one that's running here is obviously automotive UX research in the car, high complexity head-mounted eye tracking. The second one we see over here, brand and media ad research in all of these different channels. Let's see which one goes next. Yep, print reading. This actually is on a computer since you can see the picture here. Actually, the respondents, the single replay, these are all single gaze replays. Only these two are aggregated. So here, every dot is one person. And we can see immediately how the attention for TV works totally different than on other stimuli because, yeah, the flock of gaze points is rather consistent, and we can see it's mainly in the middle of the screen. Up here we see the shopping task, also aggregated pack design test, testing pop-out effects, which pack design works, how effective it is this. This could have been a real shelf and we aggregated the data on a digital stimuli, or it could have been tested on the computer screen as well. And so here I don't even know which eye tracker was used. Could have been a webcam, but looking at the accuracy here, it's probably a remote eye tracker that was stuck to the screen. Then let's move on. Here we have another supermarket. Yep, faces are blurred, very good. And now we see a classical calibration. So this is an older eye tracker used nowadays. These calibrations are not even needed anymore. Of course, the eye tracking gets more accurate if we have this control. And then shopper is by themselves. They have a shopping list, and it's kind of disclosed what the purpose of the study is. One of these shelves here is what we wanted to do research for, the others that are distractors. Same here. Yeah, this is like a Walmart in US supermarket, like way more than 10,000 products. You can imagine how our visual system is working here. It's not only orientation, but also even in the shelves and aisles, you have a lot of search tasks, and it's not even crowded in this one. Okay, here we have mobile eye tracking now in the middle. So here the mobile phone is the eye tracker. The cameras, front-facing cameras, are very good. The algorithms gotten even better, and so this is the latest advancement, let's say, in eye tracking, where bring your own devices is the idea, and we'll get to that later on as well. And here in the middle now is the classical lab eye tracking. So we have a person in front of the screen, and they're experiencing the sight, thinking out loud in this case, and we're doing the eye tracking. There's actually also more to this. Yeah, there's also the emotions of this colleague here. Actually, it's Roman. Is being analyzed. We can analyze the facial and also the tone of the voice here to add more. Yeah, and so I'll skip now and go to the theory a bit, and let's see if you guys still hear me. I think so. And something changed in my settings here. Yeah, everyone knows what attention is. So the focalization, concentration of consciousness, of its essence, it implies withdrawal from some other things in order to deal effectively with others. The Latin part I'll probably just skip. Singular sensus is kind of the idea here, and that's what William James wrote. Like, so he's like one of the founders of psychophysics, psychology, and so over 100 years ago. So the theory and the research of attention is, of course, old, and even these days now, our colleagues in the research field are still debating about many of the theoretical aspects. So when we talk about the different systems and how we process information, we'd like to of course, talk about system one and two you see here, and we added system zero since perception and attention are processes that are prerequisite. They have to come first before even emotions and cognition in this case are affected and come into place. Um, yeah, multi-factor theories like just having one or two or three processes after each other. It's a bit too simple, but it helps to break things down. Obviously, a lot of these processes are simultaneously and happen at the same time. And that also brings us kind of to the evolutionary aspect, like how our eyes work. And from the history and evolution, actually the back of our eye, where our cones and rods are part of the brain. So when we develop in the uterus, or also when our eyes develop, they're actually part of our brain physically. So that's the same for all eyes, let's say, in the in the world, in our world. And so what does it make it special? Like, is our eye very good or not so good? And actually, there's one aspect that only we as humans have, the white sclera. That's the part, the body around our iris here, the white. And that has developed evolutionary, and the scientist debates why even primates don't have this at this level. Um, it definitely helps a lot to see where we look at, and that's also probably an important part. So if I look at something, you can immediately tell where my eye is moving, and you could also follow that. So the social cognition part could play a role here, and that makes our eye special. Looking at other eyes in nature, our eyes are not that great. Let's say they're more mediocre. And yeah, dogs, whatever, falcons, toucans, chameleons, frogs, they all have much better motion, color vision, resolution, sensitivity. Ours are like kind of in the middle or a lower range. So we don't see particularly good in the dark. We don't have great color vision. We just have three rods, right? Like in our retina, other animals have 10 or 20 different ones to differentiate colors and have infrared vision and all different kinds. And but what makes our human vision special, and that's kind of also part of our evolution. It's very flexible, so we have different brain areas that influence our attention. So I could say some is like Gestalt psychology. I have to look at something that's moving, but also aspects that I can control. So I can also control, I can hold my eye still and still pay attention to what's happening outside here in the window without moving my eye. So I'm actually pretty flexible and adaptive, and so I can change my my vision to my needs. So I could search and concentrate and maybe blend out other things. And yeah, we have a very high neural integration. That's much more than any other of the animals. Um, Emotion and cognition will always influence our attention, and the part of how much our emotion influences where we look at is still being debated in the last 5 or 10 years of research. And normally our attention was kind of being interpreted as a algorithm. And it's true, of course, there are specialized parts in the brain that are focused on very specific parts of attention, but emotion and cognition always work together in our attention system. You can't separate them as easily, at least. And so, okay, let's jump into some literature. In the webinars that will follow, we'll pick out some of these books and dive a bit deeper. Let's say this eye tracking and the user experience, or the visual marketing from Wedel and Peters, because they focus a lot on shopper research and pack design. And um, yeah, today we'll just show one or two basic slides. So when the light enters the eye, of course, there's an optic nerve. It will cross. There's the chiasm. Then it will definitely go to the LGN, to the nucleus. And here it will spread out to our visual cortex. That's way in the back. And then there's two routes from the back that the information will go. the top root and the lower root, and this kind of all happens at the same time, and the amygdala is also involved where the emotional processing comes in. So prefrontal cortex definitely plays a high role. That's what I meant before, that it is very, very interesting to see how much of our brain is processing visual information. Scientists say it's like about 30% of everything that's going on in our brain. So we're differentiating between gaze, where somebody's looking, the fixation, where actually my eye stops for a brief amount of milliseconds. These fixations are what we're actually measuring. So this is where the visual processing, conscious processing takes part. When the eye is jumping the saccades, we're literally blind. And this is kind of how it looks like. Where the red dots are, the eye is stopped. And yeah, then there's smooth pursuit as well. When I'm following something, then it's a special case. So the foveal attention, where I'm actually looking at, this is an illustration that shows that everything else actually is not in focus and it's not color vision. Our brain still gives us the perception that I see everything focused and in color vision. It's not true, literally. Like if you maybe look at this green dot on your screen right now here, where I have foveal attention, this is the only part where we have high resolution vision. If you now try to not look, but focus on what I wrote here in the header, you can't read it, right? Like you have to move your eyes there to be able to read it. That's what we mean. And of course, there's different parts of attention. And I think since I didn't turn on the audio for you guys, I'll just play this anyways. Just to give you an example of how human attention works. We have to decide the whole time what we want to focus on, and our automatic system will do this for us. So some parts in space, so this is a spatial cognition example, are highlighted and focused and kind of doing this automatically. Maybe this is really important to see and focus right now. Oh, there's a monkey. Okay, got it. Looked at it. Okay, this is weird. Okay, something's happening there. And so our attention and our focus has to jump around all of the time, but consciously we can only process some parts. So if I would go back, we could debate and see like, did you actually see the other animals here? What did you actually look at? Probably I don't even remember a lot of it. And that's just how our attention works. And there's of course many of these illusions. You've all seen the Ebbinghaus illusion. And in eye tracking and attention doesn't really matter to us, but it just gives us examples of why our attention is so highly automated and why also context matters. So depending on the context, things appear differently. That's what Ebbinghaus found out. You know, of course, these two circles in the middle, they have the same size, but depending on the context, things change, right? And that's also a good example why our attention is so highly automated. And all the other ones with contrasts and figure ground and dual pictures will kind of skip here. I'll send you the deck and you can have a look at these later on. And of course, in applied research, there's a lot of examples in advertising as well, where these kind of illusions have been used positively and negatively. And Netflix, for example, down here, they used a nice split screen, so where my eye also has to look twice to get it. Here, that Coke is a nice example as well. You can immediately feel or see the bottle, even though it's not there. And so there's also nice positive ways of using these illusions. And yeah, in the eye tracking books like Duchovsky, he's one of the most famous researchers here. The history is definitely goes way back. So where and what and how does it work? What selected filters? What scans pass? The spotlight theory, glue at Treisman, the window theory, and there's many more of semantic or visual maps, emotional maps that come in now with also the advanced algorithms. Classical experiment here by Jabos is that eye tracking is very sensitive to the task I give you or the respondent. So if I just look at a picture, yeah, people look around. If I ask to examine or estimate the economic level of these people, then I'll get a different, yeah, trace. Mm, to ask something about the people's age, then it will look like this. So this is a good example why if we do eye tracking, we have to be very sensitive about the task. And if we do give different tasks, in this case, like questions or search tasks, we will have to separate the analysis. So that's one of the downsides. It's very sensitive, and we need to be careful what we do while we do eye tracking. Should we talk to you? Should we think aloud? And all of these questions. And that brings us to this publication that my colleague Matthias and I were able to participate, and we cited Wedel and Peters here, and they say actually eye tracking or human attention is influenced by three different factors. And yeah, also this chapter about neuromarketing also explained a bit why it's an important method for us. And so factors that influence visual attention, I said before, could be the ones that are endogenous, so factors are top-down, goal-orientated. So these come from my working memory, or motivation, or familiarities. And so basically that's what makes us, yeah, human, right? Like, so we can actually bring something with us, and we're not just being controlled by our environment and emotions. Then we have these bottom-up features. They're more stimulus-driven. So how much contrast do I have? Is something popping out? Shape, color, gestalt, psychology, saliency. And then we have the exposure situation. And this is for us as researchers highly important. The level of control, like, am I not allowed to do anything? Do I just have to look at pictures 10 seconds each? Or do I have a level of control? I can maybe forward, or I can actually click and scroll, or I can run around in a supermarket. That's the worst case for us as researchers to analyze the data, but of course it has the highest level of freedom, and it's the most realistic eye tracking that we can do. So in ground research in the university, basically there's no control. I maybe have one or two buttons I can click, like very basic experiments. What we do is we're trying to be in a very natural position. And these citations here, yeah, we can so skip these. And the one that we haven't focused on here is actually the emotion. The emotions, we could say they come in from the bottom, they're coming from the unconscious, but it's also not totally true, because also our learned and motivations also have something to do with our emotions. And so that's why now we would always pair emotions and cognitions and attention and not separate them, and have, like, one of the famous researchers in emotion research wrote that man is the most emotional of all animals, referring to the fact that the degree of emotionality increases across species with the development of more sophisticated nervous systems. So we are the most emotional, and that also means that our emotions have a high impact on what we will look at. And so emotions and cognition are closely intertwined. Complex human behavior emerges from dynamic interactions between all of these resources. And emotions determine how we perceive our world and how we remember it, and which decisions are made. And if I have already looked at something, I liked it, I will look at it again. And all of these processes will happen super fast. And that's a map of the brain where we actually highlighted the amygdala here, the hippocampus, the frontal cortexes. So here on the left, the attention kind of comes in through the eyes, will go to the visual cortex, but the amygdala is directly involved and will also spread information. And the prefrontal cortex as well, that's the cognition part as well, and will also influence the visual processing. So this is something we should definitely keep in mind. In other publications, we definitely also say, yep, an ad, a marketing idea needs to be seen first. If it's not seen, then of course, how shall it work? Then we have some processings and some mediators, and in the end, we'll have brand-related associations and change. And the amount of time I paid attention to something has a direct influence on all of the others, right? And so that's the attentional value. And yeah, the emotions also have a different impact. There's two nice examples as well. If I'm in a positive mood, I have a totally different field of vision. I notice more broad, and I pay attention to different things. If I'm in a negative mood, I have very narrow attention. I might look at not problems only, but more specific things. And yeah, you know all how it feels when you're hungry and you're going into the supermarket, and you'll definitely pay attention to different things, maybe not things that are so healthy. And so frequently asked questions. So thanks. Also, I already received one or two questions here. Please go ahead and give us some questions in the chat. The eye tracking and the UX already said we'll focus on that a bit more, but we like the book because it also helps. Like, do I need eye tracking in my research? Yeah, it's like asking, like, do I need a microscope to, you don't need it, obviously, but if you it all depends what you're looking for. So maybe you need an eye tracking, maybe you don't, and be the judge. And at iSquare, if we had the chance, we would always use eye tracking. Now that we don't use our labs anymore, or not as often, of course, it's not as easy to add it. And now with smartphone eye tracking and even better webcam eye tracking, we're actually again able to use it much more frequently. Yeah, it's not useful. There's always the discussion, of course. There's so much more than heat maps that we shouldn't focus too much time on. Yeah, how many participants do I need? Yeah, 42. Just kidding. So this book will focus a bit more on, and also Vidal and Peters will check out in the shopper webinar, and the misconceptions as well. So misconceptions about our visual system is also good to know, like these delusions, or what we think actually, like we move our eyes consciously and we move them very smooth and orderly. Definitely not the case. The eye is jumping around erratically, even like it looks like if you look at it unfiltered, it really looks rather weird. Our brain filters all of this out, so we think we do that. We are aware of our individual eye movement. Definitely not. Our eye has to jump 2 or 3 times a second, otherwise we'll turn blind because of our raw cones, and the rods, they will bleach out and they're not sensitive, so they have to be yeah, the eye has to move so that we have better vision all of the time. We see well beyond of our um, point of fixation. So there is, of course, a peripheral vision almost 180 degrees that we have, but everything that's out here is not in focus, not color vision. And if you reach out your arm, look at your thumb, that's like about 1 degree of our vision, and that's actually the only like about the part of the field of vision that's in focus. And if you want to read anything else, you'll have to jump with your eyes. Mm, yeah, and the other points are obvious too. So there is a lot of misconceptions about eye tracking. And yeah, let's have a look at the different methods. And over the time, eye tracking methods have been invented. There only used to be these desktop eye trackers that are kind of stuck to a screen or attached to a screen or a laptop. We call them desktop or remote eye trackers, and um, those are mainly used in the lab. And there have always been head-mounted eye trackers, so from SMI or different vendors. Now there's a few very good ones. These are very helpful. We like these a lot because also they have become so much easier to use, and also they're not as expensive as they used to be. I think when we started an eye tracker, like a desktop eye tracker, like way beyond 20, 30,000 Deutschmark, euros now, or head-mounted eye trackers as well. Like, so there's a big advanced smartphone eye tracking. There's great vendors, great algorithms. iSquare has developed its own algorithm as well, so you can just use the browser in your phone and the camera. No need to install an app anymore, and that's of course a great advance as well. The predicted eye tracking AI, eye tracking neural networks is a field, of course, that's very interesting for us as well. I'll touch this a bit as well. There's different vendors who train the algorithms here. Some of them we work very closely with, and we also use their tools. We use our own algorithms, and all of them have their, let's say, advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, let's compare these a little bit. Yeah, before I jump, like all of these partners and suppliers and vendors and algorithms, like we like to work with all of these. Some of them we have closer relationships, like Pupil Labs. They sit in Berlin. Of course, we like those guys a lot. I think iLogic, they're actually in the same building. And yeah, iMotions is a great software if you want to record um, and use different devices. Smart Eye we would always use when we go into the car and want to place cameras into the car. And yeah, there's so many different ones. Toby has been like the first one to have multiple eye trackers and also software and webcam eye tracking, and so our Swedish friends here also definitely recommendable. Just wanted to mention these. Yeah, for the overview of methods, it's always a bit difficult. Like if we talk about a budget of a project, let's say, or the budget of how much money I can spend to if you wanted to buy an eye tracker, and the precision. So that's like a simple overview of these. Desktop eye tracking is of course very accurate because it has infrared cameras that will detect my eyes and has like a high hertz. So pictures it can take per second from my eye. Um, but of course, we also need to go in the lab. Head-mounted eye trackers are also expensive, but have become a lot cheaper, and they have gotten, of course, very precise. Webcam eye tracking, smartphone eye tracking are normal cameras, so they don't have infrared, and so they're less accurate. But now the algorithm, of course, have gotten much better so I can train these a lot better. And restricted focus viewer is like it's not real eye tracking. It's where I have to move the mouse to C sharp. So it's like something rather cheap, approximate of eye tracking. And the predictive eye tracking, of course, they're very cheap, and they also get very precise these days because what they can do very good is um, focus on the bottom up, the saliency question, and they can be trained very good with real eye tracking data. So let's say a couple of years ago, these were like in the beginning. Now they have been trained over years. So I would definitely move the precision also to the right, but not for all cases. Obviously, if I have a look at the website, I have a search task, how shall that be so easily predicted? That's where, yeah, our human vision comes in, right? When I have cognition, emotion, and top down, bottom up, then it gets a bit trickier for predictive eye tracking. But yeah, if we look at the effort, how much effort is it for me to use these and to actually analyze the data? It gets a bit more complicated, and I don't think this screen, um, yeah, I definitely would discuss the screen as well. So desktop eye tracking, the effort is high because I need a computer, I need the eye tracker, and I need to invite a respondent to my lab, right? Like can't do that at home. So that's a bit tricky. Head mounted, webcam or smartphone eye tracking, it gets a bit easier. Head-mounted eye tracking, I could even send the eye tracker to you now. You unwrap it and you follow the instructions. You could start the recording pretty easily. Webcam and smartphone eye tracking you can do wherever you are. And restricted focus viewer, it's just a browser tool. And predictive eye tracking, I don't even need respondents. And then it, of course, gets even easier. And so that's what we wanted to show here. And in UX, they used this bit more complex map of research methods. So I can measure attitudes, I can measure behavior, I can do it qual or quant. And we like this map just to understand a bit where other methods come in and where eye tracking comes in. Eye tracking is right here in the top, where it's very focused on behavior. And they say, yeah, it's a bit more qual than quant. We probably wouldn't agree with this totally. Like we do eye tracking in a very qualitative way, just like 4 or 5 recordings. But also, I think our biggest eye tracking studies were like 1,000 users and online research. So it's definitely possible to do qual eye tracking. The differentiation between natural use of product and scripted is important for us as well. And eye tracking, we always would like to be as natural as possible, but then it makes the analysis more complex. A lot of the experiments are scripted, so users have restricted degrees of freedom. Um, yeah, I already mentioned the lab eye tracking. So these are the typical lab setups here, wearable in the shelf, projected shelves, the screen here. We have the ecological validity question. Of course, if I go to a real store, it's very high. If I'm more in like these simulations, it's rather the lowest. But I also want to be able to scientifically control and have an easy analysis. It's always the trade-offs in eye tracking, and that's where we also help our clients to decide what's worth it actually. Yeah, these remote eye trackers, they're also used for mobile device research in the lab, and we'll focus on these a bit more in the case when we look at the UX research. These Tobii eye trackers we like a lot since they're very precise, they're very easy to attach, and for our research, the 30, 40, or 50 hertz are totally sufficient. And then this is what we kind of get out of it. We have single replays, and if we're in control of the web page, then we also are able to match very easily how much attention, for example, did these different areas get, and how many people actually used the search, looked at menus, and so on. So these questions can be answered here with eye tracking. It's nice to have a clear research question if it's quantitative, A versus B. If it's more qualitative and I want to generate hypothesis, I want to understand users better or actually still find problems with my site in the that they're actually more usability focused. Is there a barrier somewhere or a problem? I don't need that many eye tracking videos then. And it helps a lot for developers and the project teams to understand how a user perceives this. Like A/B tests make this, I mean, like quant data I get from the websites these days. Um, they also give me scroll maps, but this is definitely has a lot more depth. So we also use these videos in interviews and after the interviews to look at them again in a retrospective way. So eye tracking videos can have a lot of benefit in this qualitative way. Head-mounted eye tracking, I mentioned pupil labs before. That's pupil invisible, stuck to a smartphone, Android smartphone that's then again connected to the cloud. Very easy to use these days. You wear, record, analyze, so no training needed. We actually send these to people's homes and have people record eye tracking videos at home by themselves. And we like to also work with our friends here at Pupil Lab. The algorithm, the cloud that analyzes this data and produces these videos is now even more interesting for us because it's able to detect video and parts in these videos where we can then start analyzing, and also detects faces now, luckily. So we're in a much safer space, and mm, so accuracy and everything does get better, but it's a lot more degrees of freedom. It's a lot more difficult to analyze these kind of videos. Automotive research will do a webinar especially on that too. Here, of course, the safety aspects are why eye trackers are used. So eye tracking in this case is not a very good thing. If people look at screens for too long, they'll actually get banned. So before I come to the end, I'll check the time. Just wanted to show the smartphone eye tracking and the prediction briefly. The smartphone eye tracking, since we rely on the phone camera, we do need the calibration. Working on something without the calibration, so no hardware needed, no app installed. That's very important for us. So we want to run everything from the browser, and this is yeah, an example of how the eye tracking, the accuracy can actually look like. Of course, that on the right-hand side, it's a replay, and the idea here is that we are in control of the browser, what's being displayed, and we don't have to record the screen, because that's, yeah, it's not a very nice idea to analyze how eye tracking works, and the amount of data that can be recorded and the time it can be analyzed. That's what's speaking for the smartphone eye tracking. And so we screen people, we calibrate, we invite them for a task, and we have a post question that is like always a whole research flow. And yeah, for the validation, um, we can always in between ask people to click at something in order, and then we can see how the eye tracking works, or if we need to maybe adapt it. And so that's for us the most interesting eye tracking part in the last years, let's say. The data we get out of it, the heat maps we mentioned, we can set areas of interest to define an area, and I want to know how many people actually looked at this. Of course, the higher, the more, and we can decide how long people looked at it. Now, this is an average. So, on average, people looked at this part for 5 seconds. That's very long. And so then these are like the typical data that we would get right away out of an eye tracking analysis. And there's, of course, many other data points, like how often did somebody come back their visits, or how long was a fixation? Was it just very short, or were there long reading fixations? So we could go in more depth, and having this data for my research project also helps us sometimes even afterwards in a workshop to decide like, actually that would be a nice idea. Let's go back and look into the data, even though we didn't have had a hypothesis concerning a certain field. And the predictive eye tracking, we definitely like to use if we have a lot of variants, let's say 5 or 10 or even 20 prototypes. How do we differentiate them? They're also very objective. I get very clear data, like how cluttered is an image, how much information is on there, where will people most likely look at, and depending on how the algorithm is trained, it's very good or also very bad. Like on the right here, you see these pictures of humans, and we did a TV show experiment where we actually had women and men look at these. And I don't know, you could imagine which ones probably got most of the attention. I know this guy, 51, he was the winner. And also this guy, 30, got most of the attention for the TV show. So they were most attractive, let's say. And the algorithm didn't really get that right. So that's actually the longest is 1.8 up here. Okay, now this is these are different faces. So number 3, he's a winner from the real people. And yeah, the algorithm didn't get this. But of course, also the algorithm was never trained on a picture like this, right? It's a weird picture. It's not an ad. It's not a shelf. So we need to be fair here too. So here the algorithm is very good to actually predict the eye tracking, and it's fast moving. Every frame is analyzed, and so there is at first glance it looks very good. Of course, there's also some caveats, and this analysis has been done a while ago, I think, with the neurons algorithm, and yeah, the facial effects and the gaze cueing, like the humans get this, like the M&M figure looks at its fingers, and the algorithm hasn't learned that yet, and it's also a very difficult task to understand gaze cueing, and yeah, of course, then there's downsides for the algorithms, but it's very fast and cheap, and let's say it's getting better and better, especially for print ads like these. And it will get better and better. And so I'll skip over these slides and come to the end. Maybe it's a good idea that I'll just come here. The eye tracking examples in applied research for branded media research, for example, what we did for Facebook and what we did for and with Google. Then we'll look at in the next webinar. I think Marvin and I will focus on this. And so let me stop here since um, there's still one or two questions. Yeah. Of course, the price question is always a good one. Like, how much do the eye trackers cost? It totally varies. Like, of course, the smartphone and the webcam doesn't cost anything at all. We can send you a link. You can test it. Feel free to reach out. Um, and the accuracy question is also a good one. Yeah, they get very accurate. Let's say on the screen, if I would have the remote eye trackers, they're accurate, like something like a couple of pixels. The eye trackers that I wear, like glasses, they're as accurate, definitely as like 1 centimeter, depending on the distance, of course. So these have gotten very accurate. So reading, if I wanted to do proper reading research, ground research, they would always recommend to do this on a screen with a proper remote eye tracker that has infrared and is fixed. When I wear glasses, and that has gotten a lot better. Yeah, the price of these remote eye trackers, they vary. So let me go to pupillabs.com. Some are transparent about the prices. So if I go here on products, I can see the price of their different devices. So the Neon is the latest one, and it's 6,000 euros, which like these days now is a very good price. You can here get an idea of the accuracy. Now this is moving imagery, but this is what you'll get right away out of the device. And I got distracted. Yeah, the analysis is the downside, let's say, of an eye tracking research project. The more control I have about the environment, let's say um, the pictures or the videos I show, the easier it is to analyze. So if I would show you 10 pictures in a slideshow, I would have the analysis right away. But if I actually want to give you more freedom surf the internet or visit a shop or anything, go to Amazon, then it will get very, very difficult. That's why we will always encourage within our eye tracking to use our context sandboxes where we actually control the environment. So it's a replica, let's say, of Walmart or of any site, and then we exactly know what people were doing and have the ability to tag every element, and that helps a lot. And with the pupil friends, they invest a lot of money in new algorithms that detect certain parts in the real world and can then map the eye tracking data on top of it so that it's actually also possible to do automatic analysis. In the years back, like we had to do many analysis where a human always had to correct or code data as well. Well, thank you for your questions. And yeah, if you have any questions for demos, you can always get back to me and we'll send you more information about the upcoming webinars for UX, for shopper research, and for brand and media. And if we forgot any topic that you're interested in, please let us know and we'll also bring it up in the next upcoming webinars. And then I'll let you go. Wish you a good rest of the day, good morning, or good afternoon, depending from where you dialed in, and say thank you very much.